I decided, you know what, this isn't working. I'm taxiing back. I'm not gonna fly this airplane. If I can't find an obvious problem, I need to find a way out of this situation. And it was just ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Hello everyone, welcome back to Average Aviator. I'm Travis, and today I've got a very interesting story about a ferry flight that didn't quite go as I had hoped this past summer. And I had a bunch of lessons learned, so I'll include that at the end of the video. So stick around and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Now, as a couple caveats, I wasn't expecting to make a video out of this. It was only apparent that this would be an interesting experience in the middle of it going on, I guess. So the film that I do have is off my phone, and it's not real great, so just bear with me on that one. Also, the events that happen might be portrayed as a little bit negative on the people involved, so I've decided to change names and blur faces for confidentiality's sake. So like I said, just bear with me and hopefully you enjoy it. So the story all started one day. I was sitting outside my hangar, strapping into the Skybolt, about to head to a fly-in or aerobatic practice that day, and an old Saturn with two elder gentlemen in it, pulled up right next to the Skybolt. And I thought, well, this is just kind of odd. I'm about to start the engine. I don't know what these guys are doing. So I looked over and said, can I help you? And the driver, we'll name this driver Jerry. From now on, he'll be called Jerry. So Jerry said, hey, I've got a Piper Colt that needs to be moved from Franklin County Regional Airport to Butler County Regional Airport. So I thought, hey, free flight hours, sure, yeah, I could, whatever the circumstances, yeah, I'll help you. You need a pilot? I'll do it. He wanted me to fly the Colt that day, but I was busy that day, so I told him, hey, here's my number. We'll be in contact. We'll figure out another day to do it. So a couple days later, I got off work early, and the weather was great, so we got in contact and decided to move the airplane that day. Now, when you're ferrying an airplane, and by ferrying I mean relocating an airplane from one airport to another, logistics can get a bit tricky. As I was discussing the logistics of this ferry with Jerry, he told me that he wanted to fly with me in the Colt because he was a student pilot and couldn't fly by himself, and his instructor was unavailable, hence why he wanted me to fly it. I thought, okay, well, that's a normal request. He's a student pilot, he just wants to get in the air. I'd be doing the same thing, so that's fair. The problem is that complicates things just slightly. If he's flying with us, then we'd need a third person to drop us off at the airport. We could theoretically get a taxi, but those are really expensive. So he agreed to get a driver, and since I was coming from my work, I didn't have all the necessary supplies that I normally fly with. So I just asked him, hey, do you have a headset? Because that's pretty much all I need. I could do with a map as well. And he said, don't worry, I've got a sectional and I've got a headset for you. So then we discussed how we're going to meet up and physically get together to go up to Franklin. So I finally convinced him to meet at the Butler County Airport. We set up a time, and I am there at that time, and he is not. So I call him up and say, hey, where are you at? He said, oh, don't worry, I'm getting my driver. It's just gonna take a little bit. I think, fair enough. This is a little bit last minute. He's probably just working with the driver that he's coordinated, and maybe they're finishing something up or whatever, or they weren't quite ready at that time. That's fair. But 45 minutes later, Jerry shows up by himself without a driver. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd, but still, not that ridiculous, because maybe he was waiting a long time for his driver, and they just figured it'd be easier if he comes to pick me up first. So I hop in, and he says, I'm gonna go pick up the driver. Okay, I left my car at Butler. I am now in Jerry's car, and we arrive at what I can only describe it as a mental health facility. I'm not entirely sure what they do there, and I'm not trying to judge anyone for anything, but I think it was a mental rehabilitation facility, and there was just a random guy standing outside. But again, like I said, not trying to judge. Thought, okay, that's fair. Maybe this guy works here. He's probably a nice guy. Whatever. So we'll call the driver Phil. So Phil comes out of off this mental rehabilitation facility and hops in the car. And it was then that I realized that Phil and Jerry had never met each other before. And I have no idea how Phil and Jerry got connected or what that was all about, but that's when it really started becoming a little uncomfortable with the situation. But I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's just see how it goes. Free flight hours. So Phil hops in the car and starts driving up to the airport in Franklin. For anybody that doesn't know, driving from Butler to Franklin, especially the airport in Franklin, is literally the easiest drive. You hop on Route 8, you go straight until you hit the airport. It started becoming concerning when Phil, the driver, stated that he didn't have a phone and didn't know how to get there and needed to constantly be reminded that he was on the correct route. This is slightly concerning because the plan was to fly me and Jerry to fly back in the Colt and have Phil drive Jerry's car by himself back to Butler. And he was having concerns that he wouldn't be able to make it back. At this point, I'm in Jerry's car and there's really not much I can do besides telling him to let me out of the car and just bail completely. So on the drive, me and Jerry discussed some stuff about, our backgrounds in flying and, student pilot stuff. And then I asked him why he's moving the airplane, and he didn't really give me a straight answer, but I thought, well, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter why he's moving the airplane, I'm just there to move it. But then I suggested, hey, why don't you move it to Butler Farm Show? Because that's a much smaller airport, it's much cheaper to keep it there instead of Butler County, where it's hard to get a hangar and it's gonna be a lot more expensive. And he proceeds to tell me, oh, I can't move it to Farm Show because I already owe thousands of dollars in hangar rent there, and they hate me, and so I can't show my face there again. Again, I'm in his car. There's not really much I can do. I'm there to move an airplane, and so that's what I'll continue to do. So we all arrived at the Franklin County Airport, and Jerry and Phil start to clean out the hangar and doing some other stuff while I pre-flighted the airplane. And I know I'm the last person that should be judging an airplane for cosmetic condition, but there was definitely some interesting things going on with this airplane. I mean, the hand-painted cowl I could get over. I mean, like, my airplane had crap paint for the longest time. But the one thing that I did think was very interesting was every single or almost every instrument on the instrument panel was labeled in what looked like handwritten whiteout what it was. And I've never seen that before. Perhaps that might help a student pilot, but it seemed to me that if you needed to look at a label of what the instrument was, you probably shouldn't be flying. I don't know. It's just very, very odd. So while I'm doing my pre-flight, Jerry then decided to inform me that on his last flight, he wasn't entirely sure if the radio was working. And I thought, okay, well, I've dealt with that before, so that's not that big of a deal. The fuel truck had come over and the line guy working the desk there, he had a handheld radio, so I decided, okay, well, since he's here, let's go test it and see if it actually does work. So I pulled out the headset that Jerry had brought me, or said that he had for me, and yeah, well, just look and see for yourself. So that was interesting. So I pulled out the headset that Jerry was going to use himself, and I used that, and we determined that the radio was transmitting, but it couldn't receive anything. So I could talk to other people, I could announce my position, but there was no way of hearing anybody else. At this point, with only one headset and all the other stuff that had gone on, I decided, you know what? If I'm going to do this, Jerry is going to be a strict passenger. He's not going to touch the controls. I'm just going to ferry the airplane from Franklin to Butler as if I'm the only pilot, and I don't care if he's the owner. If he wants me to do it, that's the way it's going to be. So I finished up a really thorough pre-flight on the rest of the airplane, and everything seemed pretty decent for the rest of the airplane. So I gave Jerry the bad headset and told him, hey, this is what you gave me. I'm going to use the good one because I'm the pilot. I'm going to fly the airplane because we can't communicate. But before we left, we made sure to make it explicitly clear what we wanted Phil to do because he didn't have a phone. If something were to go wrong and we had to return to the airport, or for whatever reason, there was no way to contact Phil and tell him to turn around and pick us up. So we told him very clear, at least 4 times, we need you to stay here until we take off and then come back and tell you that you can leave. And he affirmed that that's what he was going to do. And you'll probably see where this is going. So we hop in, the plane starts up, no problem. We taxi out, I do an engine run up, and during the engine run-up, one of the mag fails miserably. This could be because of a fouled spark plug, so the procedure is to run up the engine to higher RPM and lean it out for a while, and maybe you can burn off some of the lead deposits. It's a normal thing that happens. I've had it happen a bunch of times, but that might not be the only cause of a mag drop being lower than it should. And so I have Jerry hold the handbrake while I run up the engine and test the mag, and I run the engine up for a while and try to burn off any theoretical lead deposits, and the mag still would not work. And no amount of trying to burn off any lead deposits was helping. So after about 10 minutes or so of attempting this, I decided, you know what, this isn't working. I'm taxiing back. I'm not gonna fly this airplane. So I released the brake to start taxiing back, and that's when I realized the brakes had locked up, because apparently they hadn't been actuated for so long that when they were held for that long, they didn't want to release. So I had to taxi back, just announcing my position on the radio, looking for other traffic, giving the airplane almost full power just to taxi around at normal taxi speed in order to get back to the hangar. And it was just ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. So when we finally got back to the hangar, I shut the airplane down. And at that point, I figured, you know what, I'm done. I might be able to try to find an obvious problem with the airplane, but if I can't find an obvious problem, I need to find a way out of this situation. So as we got back to the hangar, we realized that Phil, of course, did not listen to us and had taken off. And Phil doesn't have a phone, so there's no way to contact him to tell him to turn around and pick us up. So I decide my best option is to try to at least see if there's anything obvious wrong with the airplane that I can fix so I can at least just get back to my car somehow. But Jerry decides that the best option is to call the police to see if they can stop Phil and tell him to turn around. That's when I really thought, things are going south quick. So I also decided to do my own research to see if there's anybody around the area that could come pick me up from Franklin. And this went back and forth for about an hour, trying to find somebody to come pick me up and trying to hopelessly fix this rubbish airplane. Thankfully, I had gotten a hold of my CFI, and he happened to have a discovery flight that day. And so they had a little bit of free reign of where he could go. And he talked to the student, and the student was fine with it. And so then they came over from Macville and picked me up. The student got a little extra flying that day, and I got out of the situation. And it was awesome to just take off and just be in the back of the 172 that I know is safe, and just away from that ridiculousness. So after this whole fiasco, I decided to take a second look and see if there's anything that I could learn from the entire ridiculous ordeal. And there's definitely a couple takeaways. The first one is one that I think I did wrong. I didn't check and make sure that the maintenance records were there personally to check to see if they were right. Especially knowing what I know now about Jerry, I am not 100% sure that airplane was in annual or legally signed off maintenance-wise to fly. And knowing what I know about Jerry, I would not put it past him to just say, oh yeah, it's good to go, and have it not be. But I was PIC. That wouldn't have been on Jerry if anything had happened. That would have been on me. It's my job to make sure that the airplane is airworthy. The good thing is that the lesson that I kind of think I did right was that if you are PIC, even if it's somebody else's airplane, if you are PIC, you need to make the decisions. There was plenty of times in this situation where Jerry was pressuring me to do things or misleading me to do stuff. And the way that the situation went, I had to make the decision to say, okay, you know what? If I'm still gonna do this, this is how it's gonna go. If I'm gonna still do this, I need you, even though you're the owner, to just step back and not interfere. And also on that same note, you have to, as PIC, be able to call off the flight when you don't feel you're comfortable. It's hard to do, especially when there's not an obvious way out. When the mags failed, I didn't have a ride back to the airport. I didn't have anything. I could have theoretically said, whatever, the mag drop, whatever, who cares? It's only a short flight, let's try it anyway. But thankfully I had the wherewithal to be like, nope, you know what? I'm PIC, I'm not doing this flight, and I'm not gonna let other pressures like inconveniencing somebody else or trying to have to figure out my own way home from Franklin, all that other stuff, I didn't let that make me make an unsafe decision. If you're not comfortable and you've evaluated the entire situation and you think that the risk is too high, don't do it. Don't let the the fact that you might not have an obvious way out, or there might be other consequences if you opt out of the flight, to keep you from making the safety conscious decision. If you like this sort of thing, this is kind of what I do here. I share my aviation experiences with you in order to help everybody learn and entertain a little bit as well. So if you like that, please consider hitting the subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them. And if you have any further, more in-depth questions, you can email me, averageaviatorchannel@gmail.com, or follow me on Instagram. I've got a lot of cool videos and stories and pictures on there. _aviator. Send me a message on there as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see ya.